I am an educated man. I attended 3 colleges and racked up numerous academic honors. I was named to 3 National Honor Societies, hold lifetime memberships in 3 National Honor Societies. I made the president's list at 2 institutions, one every semester for 2 consecutive years, and another one for the entire year that I was there. So I did extremely well and performed very well, effectively in college, and I learned a few things there too. I also won several academic scholarships. So yes, I am an educated man. So what do I think of higher education in the United States? Not much. I'll just tell you that, not much. During the 2016 election, we had all these people who, after Hillary Clinton won the nomination, they were all excited about her election as Madam President, and they thought that she was going to do good and wonderful and great things. That was never going to happen because Republicans were going to keep a House majority. Wasn't quite so sure about the Senate, but the House was never in play, and the Republicans were going to keep the House majority, and they were going to block everything that Hillary tried to do. Now, if they even thought of the fact that Republicans would keep the House, I guess people who were all excited about Madam President thought that after the election, Hillary would reach out to the House Republicans, and they would reach out to her, and everybody would sing around the campfire and sing Kumbaya and move on to do great things for the United States. And of those people, many of them college educated, I have to ask, where did you get your diploma? Did you draft it yourself using Microsoft Publisher or Page Plus or Microsoft Word or something like that? Because if you actually believe that, then you don't know a damn thing about the system. And a lot of people don't know anything about the system. You have all these people running around saying, let's do away with the electoral college. They have no idea that that can't possibly be done for this reason. To abolish the electoral college involves a vote. It has to be approved by 2/3 of the U.S. Senate, 2/3 of the U.S. House, and then 38 states. No party is ever going to get that kind of majority in Congress unless one party just completely goes away. Even if they do, there's no way that you're going to get 38 states to ratify such an amendment. The Constitution hasn't been amended that many times in United States history, and that's why, because it's almost impossible to do. The level of support has to be almost unbelievable to ever get a constitutional amendment through Congress and then through the states. In the 70s, there was an amendment proposed called the Equal Rights Amendment. After 10 years, it died because, that amendment process drug on for 10 years, and finally the expiration time ran out and the amendment died. And so the Equal Rights Amendment was never adopted to the U.S. Constitution. And that is the fate of most constitutional amendments. So why am I saying all this about the election and about the Electoral College? Well, the fact is that most college graduates in the United States don't have a damn clue how the system works. If they did, they would not have been so excited about Madam Hillary. So I don't know what they're learning in a lot of these places. And then also, I saw some teaching methods that I thought were just plain ridiculous during my college years. You have these professors who insist on this give and take, back and forth class discussion, and they have participation grades, and they assign these ridiculous group projects, ad hoc groups that you have to kind of come together like Hollywood Week used to be on American Idol. And so you have these artificially formed groups, people that have never known each other, they have no connection whatsoever, and suddenly they're expected to work together on this group project. You know what happened when I got involved in those group projects? Usually I would align myself with the other strong person in the group, and we essentially carried everybody else. It would usually be me and one other leader, and we did the bulk of the work and carried everybody else. But you know what? We didn't blame everybody else. We, a lot of times, were allowed to evaluate our peers, and you know what me and the other strong person would usually do? We'd usually give them perfect schools because we thought the project was stupid and unfair to start with. That's what we do, because we didn't think those things were fair at all. So you have these class discussions, you have these seminars, you have these situations where people get in arguments with other people, and that's not even worth doing, really. You know, any class that you take at the collegiate level, you're going to be there a certain number of weeks, and then you're going your separate ways. What's the point in getting in political arguments, philosophical arguments, and having all this back and forth between students? I never went to college to learn from other students, except for maybe a few cultural things and some cultural insights. Never went to school to learn how to learn from other students. I went to learn from professors. And you know, the best professor that I ever had, here's the way he's taught. We didn't have a textbook for that class. What he did was stand in front of the class and give an hour-and-a-half lecture. And you took notes as fast as you could for the entire lecture. You wrote your notes in a notebook as fast as you could, and that became your textbook. And then you studied those notes prior to the exams, and if you went through the notes multiple times, you could do well on the test, and then he would give you a discussion test and assign questions that you had to discuss in detail. Dr. Ralph Savage, possibly one of the best professors that I ever had. We didn't get hung up on debates or class discussions or group projects or any of that nonsense. He just lectured us. We wrote the notes in a notebook. We studied the notes. We took the discussion test. If you studied the notes backwards and forwards several times, you did well. And that's how I think that most classes should be taught, unless it's a hands-on class like television production or a theater class where you have to build sets or something like that, or a home economics class where you have to make clothes or cook, or a judo class where you actually have to get out there and, you know, do it. If it's not a hands-on class, then I firmly believe that most classes should be taught in the way that I described. However, a lot of professors don't want to do that. They want to have these idiotic class discussions going back and forth between students. They want to give participation grade. They want to have you running here and there and all over the place. And, you know, these courses that did all the crazy things, I never learned very much from them. I really didn't. I learned from the lectures and the notes and the writing of discussion tests. That's where I learned most. And I can tell you a lot about political theory because I studied modern political theory with Dr. Savage, and then I liked that so well that I studied governments of Asia under him, and then I liked that class so well that I studied international relations under Dr. Savage because I loved the way he taught. He lectured, you wrote notes, you studied your notes, and you discussed his questions in detail on the test, and you pass. Now, there's one other thing that's really important in classes that are not really hands-on, and that's the ability to write papers. So in addition to the way Dr. Savage taught, I think it's also fine and good idea if some professors in different subjects assign a research paper, a major research paper for that class. Lectures, notes, tests, and research papers, and that's the way that college classes ought to be taught. And people, if they don't require hands-on experience, that is, and people would learn an awful lot more if they didn't have to get caught up in all this extroverted mess. In spite of the fact that I talk on video all the time, I'm definitely not an extrovert, and I can talk to audiences too, but I'm still not an extrovert. So that's how I think college classes ought to be taught, but there are too many damn professors who don't want to do that. They got to have all this idiotic back and forth all of the time. Now, what about oral communication, the ability to speak to audiences? Well, I think that's an important class to take, but there are several ways you could do it other than a traditional speech class. One, you could do the traditional speech class and have people write and deliver speeches in front of an audience. You could do that. Or you could do it in such a manner as having them deliver a presentation on video, as I'm doing right now, because that's just as important. Sometimes people who do video presentations and also do speeches and vice versa, but I think the ability to present on video is just as important these days as the ability to speak to an audience. You know what? I found out that I actually prefer it. I have spoken to audiences many times in my life, and I've done very well at it. But I think I actually like doing this better. And you still have an audience, and it's a little bit interesting because when you deliver a video and post it on Facebook, YouTube, or other places, you don't know who your audience is. A lot of times you don't know who's going to see it. And so that adds an interesting element to presentations that you do online. So oral communication, you could have a speech class, you could have a class that focused on video presentations, or you could have them take an acting class. Either one of the three would work. Now also, I think this marriage between science and math goes a little bit too far as well. But I'm terrible at that. I'll just tell you that straight up. I can't count money very well. Cash, if it's like balancing a cash drawer or something like that, I don't do that very well at all, which is the reason that I don't think hand counting ballots would be a very good idea. I think that would be a disaster, actually, to hand count ballots, because I have issues counting money. So I am not very good at all at mathematics, but I was pretty good at science. I got good grades in my 2 biology classes and my archaeology class. Very well. I did very well in those, but I didn't do well in math. So if there's a way to study science and get into science without being a math expert, I think that would be good. Also, I think that actually, I don't think algebra is required for most careers that are going to be out there. I mean, I really don't. I think it's unnecessary, and the way they teach it is ridiculous. They don't spend a lot of time explaining. They just assign homework, and I think that is ridiculous. And, you know, so I think if there could be if science and math didn't have to be so strongly connected, that would also be a good idea. Now, as I said, I like to focus in classes that don't require hands-on experience, lectures, note-taking, tests based on the notes, and in some classes, research papers. Then, with the oral communication, video presentations, speeches, or an acting class. That works just as well. And here's another thing. You know what? A class that doesn't require necessarily hands-on experience, most of them could be done by video or on the internet. They really could. You wouldn't even have to attend classes. As a matter of fact, I hope the days of attending, I don't know if it's coming, but I wish the days of attending brick and mortar colleges would just go away, because I don't really see the point. I think education is about the academic education beyond high school, well, maybe high school education too, now that I think about it. But I think education is about the individual receiving information. And, you know, what about extracurricular activities? Well, you know, in some countries, schools aren't involved with sports. And rather than being associated with schools, the sports are just local leagues that you have in different towns. Maybe that's a good idea. I don't know. I don't really know about that. I don't know if the difference would be important enough to pursue anyway. So there's my take on higher education in the United States. I think the way that it is done in most colleges and universities is ridiculous, and I'd like to see the system completely redesigned. Is that likely to happen? No, it isn't. But I'll tell you this, as long as higher ed in the United States does such a lousy job of educating people, I'm going to have my doubts about anybody who shows up with a bachelor's degree. As a matter of fact, I'll have more doubts about them than I do with people who don't have a bachelor's degree. Because, as Dr. Savage, my good political science professor, said one time, a lot of college graduates are dopes. But whereas a lot of college graduates are dopes, a lot of high school grads are pretty smart. I have found that to be so true in real life. I'm not suggesting that you could be a doctor or an attorney or an accountant necessarily without a college education, but in many respects, high school graduates are smarter than college grads about many things, and that's just an unfortunate fact. Because the system that we have in the United States of higher ed, it really isn't very good, if you ask me. And so that's my opinion on that. Have a great